Howdy all, grab yourselves a beer. It is time for some Path of Exile discussion. And today, upcoming Divination cards for the Legion expansion were announced. This is not a full list of them yet, but we've got 9 of the 14 that are coming. I wanted to just take some time to go through the 9 Divination cards that have been spoiled. A little bit on my thoughts as to why you might decide to seek them out or not seek them out, and which ones I think will have a big impact on the meta. As is always the case with Divination cards, we don't know yet where they're going to drop. This will only be found out in time as we start to play, and so some of these may be more or less common, more or less available than we think. For instance, I was very surprised that the Arrogance of the Vile Divination card, which quickly became one of my favourite ones out of Synthesis, was as common as it was. Likewise for Sambodi's Vow, which you seem to get roughly once in every 3 Betrayal encounters that you do. I thought that Divination card was also going to be quite rare. Pleasantly surprised when it wasn't. So one of the big factors is whether Divination cards can be target farmed or not. For instance, if you were to take a Divination card like the Nurse drops in the Tower map as well as Chevron's Tower during the during the leveling experience. It's a pretty rare Divination card. I think you'd normally get one about every 25 maps if you're not really doing heavy investment. And if you're doing heavy investment, you get obviously a lot more than that. When I say not very heavy investment, I'm talking you chisel your maps, you elk them, and then you chaos until you get maybe 23% or higher pack size. 23% pack size will then correspond to about 79% increased item quantity on that map. So if you're doing that to your tower maps, you'll get one roughly every 20 to 25 maps. If you're juicing them up much more by stacking sextant mods and carefully selecting prophecies to use that synergize well with your sextant mods, then you get a lot more. But the key thing is that the Nurse Divination card is target farmable. It drops in one specific map, and you always can get access to that map. Maybe not necessarily if you're playing solo self-found, but if you're playing in a trade league, you can just buy as many tower maps as you can afford. On the flip side, some Divination cards are much less farmable. For instance, there are cards that drop in some of the rarer unique maps. There are cards that drop in the Val Temple map. There are cards that drop in Chayula's Breachstones only. Those Divination cards are much less farmable. It's not that you can't keep buying more Chayula's Breachstones if you're in a trade-enabled league, but that doing so ends up being an all-consuming activity if you're getting into it. So for that reason, those Divination cards don't tend to have the same massive impact on the game, on the league, and on the Atlas decisions that the Divination cards that have a set location in the Atlas of Worlds tend to do. Anyways, that's enough about Divination cards in general. Let's get into the new ones. Burning Blood. This is a Divination card for Xoph's Blood Corrupted. Xoph's Blood is a Breach unique. It looks pretty innocuous at first. 10% increased life, yeah, nice. 20 to 40% max fire res, nice. 10% increased strength, yeah, I'll take that. Damage penetrates 10% fire res. Cover enemies in ash when they hit you. But then you've got these 3 big words: Avatar of Fire. Avatar of Fire is a keystone passive on the passive tree that causes you to gain 50% to have 50% of all of your physical, cold, and lightning damage converted to fire damage, but renders you unable to deal any damage that is not fire damage. This is a drawback on most builds. You would not take this on a random build, and you would not equip this amulet on a random build. However, if you're using any melee skill that has the text convert some percentage of your damage to fire naturally, a good example of this is the Consecrated Path skill, then Xoph's Blood is an absolutely amazing piece of kit that you can add on. What it will do is it will let you take not just the 50% inherit conversion on that skill, but get the full 100% conversion, which then means all you need to focus on is scaling your fire damage. And all that fire damage you've been scaling has 10% penetration. You also cover enemies in ash when they hit you as well, which is an extra bonus. So, and you can see here that this causes them to take increased fire damage taken and to have less movement speed. All in all, Xoph's Blood is a very powerful item. Now, it drops currently only, well, it drops currently as a combination of two things. You need to get Xoph's Heart, which is a unique amulet that drops from Xoph's domain, from Breachlord Xoph, or sometimes I believe it can drop from trash monsters in Xoph-themed breaches as well. You also need a Blessing of Xoph, which can only drop from Breachlord Xoph. So this means that you need to run fire breaches in order to get it, Xoph's breaches, and you need to run quite a few of them. Xoph's Blood is believed to have a drop rate of 1 per 20 breaches. That's for the unupgraded amulet. The unupgraded amulet, Xoph's Heart, is the more common. Is the rarer part of the two. You need one of each of them. Xoph's Blood, the Xoph's upgrade stone has a 50% drop rate on a normal breach stone, and higher than 50% if you've used a charged, enriched, or pure breach stone. The actual Xoph's Heart baseline amulet, so that's this one here, is believed to have about a 5% drop rate. And that's coming from empirical testing with a small sample size. So I think in one of the previous leagues, someone ran about 90 or 100 Xoph breach stones. So the number that they got made them believe that it was a 5% drop rate, but it was not a statistically significant sample size. I do also recall someone else doing 500 runs and again getting similar results, about 5%. That's a bit closer to statistically significant, but even then, anywhere from 3 to 7% is still within a 95% confidence interval at that point. So, anyways, the long and the short of it is that Xoph's Blood is hard to acquire very early in a league, and it remains powerful and it remains valuable all through the league. Having it available with corruptions on it already is going to be amazing. This is an amulet that corrupts quite well. Being an amber amulet, strength implicit, it's not rubbish, but there are far better ones available on the corrupted implicits list. For that reason, I think the Xoph's Blood is going to be a very popular divination card to chase, so the Burning Blood divination card. It really just comes down to where it drops. If it drops in a map like Caldera, it's going to be target farmed by people for a lot. Likewise if it drops in Volcano, but that map is already stuffed with good divination cards. Or if it drops in Crater. Crater is already an excellent map, so Crater and Caldera would be two spots that if it drops in those, you can expect to see a number of people shaping their atlases around that map. On the other side, if it drops in a non-farmable area, then it's just going to be a nice bonus every time you get it. Don't let this divination card go for less than an Exalt early in the league. We'll have to see where Xoph's Blood settles, but I do think that it being corrupted is an upside. When you have a divination card that is corrupted like this, the end result, you'll get the item, and it will have a single implicit corruption, replacing the standard implicit that's on the item. For amulets, that's a huge upgrade. As I say, 20 to 30 strength is not very strong as an implicit, but a lot of the corrupted amulets implicits are very strong. Another thing with this, always turn it in on a level 80 or higher character. At level 80, a very powerful, very, very, very powerful corrupted implicit becomes available, and that is +1 maximum resistances to all maximum resistances. The item level of an item that's given by a divination card is equal to your character level, hard capped at 80. So if you turn these divination cards in on a level 79 character, you'll get an item level 79 Xoph's Blood that is corrupted, and the level 79 corruptions do not include +1 to all maximum resists. However, the level 80 ones do. So always turn it in on a level 80 or higher character. That's not always the case. There are some items like Frost Ferno that you want to corrupt a lower level version of, but for Xoph's Blood, you want to be corrupting item level 80 ones, and so that means you want to be turning this in at character level 80. Second up is Echoes of Love. This is a Fidelitas Spike with 2 implicit corruptions. Now, Fidelitas Spike is a reasonably obscure weapon. It's a common drop, but it's one that I've never paid much attention to because I've never used it. And a lot of people have been questioning the person that designed this divination card as to why they submitted it, because they regard Fidelitas Spike as a total junk item. Anyways, let's have a look. It's a unique jagged foil, so a low-level base weapon. but it is a base weapon that has a pretty powerful inherent implicit on it, 25% global crit multi. You're going to lose that when it's twin implicit corrupted. It deals no physical damage, and it adds 1 to 40 or 50 lightning damage, 25% to 30% increased attack speed. So this is a fast attacking weapon. Plus 2 life gain for each enemy hit, and 15 to 20% chance to shock. Now all of this does not make for an impressive item so far. But the key thing that's here is this line. Herald of Thunder has 50% increased buff effect. Herald of Thunder is an interesting one, and I think that the intention of the designer of this card has been for people to focus on that line. Herald of Thunder has a 50% increased buff effect, or even 100% increased buff effect. Now that only applies to the added lightning damage that Herald of Thunder adds to your attacks. So if you have a look at the gem here, you'll see that Herald of Thunder adds, at level 20, it adds 19 to 76 lightning damage to spells and to attacks, which is quite a bit, but it doesn't improve the lightning bolts that fall around. So if instead of 19 to 76, if we're starting to look at 38 to 152, from one of these items, that's once you've got that's once you've got 2 of these items equipped. That's what your Herald of Thunder is giving you. It's not an added lightning damage support, but it's not all that far behind it. So if you're playing a build that stacks lightning damage, you're getting quite a bit out of using this as a caster stat stick. So for that reason, I can understand where the creator is coming from with this item, and I think there will be some fun twin implicit corruptions that will come out of this. The other thing is that it's an item that doesn't benefit at all from quality, and so not having quality on it is completely harmless. In any case, I'm sure that the designer of that card is going to have some fun turning it in, and I'm sure they're having fun at the moment watching the Reddit comments from people that don't get where they're coming from with the design. But in any case, I think that item Fidelitas Spike is better than people give it credit for, but I'm not personally looking to put this together. On the flip side though, there is one thing that really does excite me about this card, and it's not actually Echoes of Love itself, it's that GGG are approving specific unique items with twin implicit corruptions. This is good for me because I submitted a divination card along those lines, not sure whether it would get past review or not. I wasn't sure whether GGG would say, no, that's too much of a deterministic outcome that you're offering players. My divination card was for Skin of the Loyal. Skin of the Loyal being the tabular upgrade that drops from Chaeola themed zones, and that is always 6 linked, has +1 to gem levels, and plus 100% global defenses. So that's 100% increased energy shield, 100% increased armor, 100% increased evasion rating, for which then applies. It doesn't stack as well as that sounds, but it does help. It does help out quite a bit. So basically, it's just a massive upgrade on Tabula. The drawback to Skin of the Loyal, however, is that its socket colors cannot be changed. And so if my divination card gets approved, you might wind up in a situation where you get a 3 blue, 3 red Skin of the Loyal that has perfect seeming implicits for stacking lightning damage, or something like that. That's going to end up being really difficult to figure out how. Sorry, not lightning damage, stacking cold damage. You're going to figure out how to use that is going to be, or whether you can use it at all, is going to be an interesting little puzzle. So anyways, as I say, Echoes of Love, whilst I'm not looking to compile this set myself in-game, I'm sure some people will have fun with it, and the idea that we can submit divination cards for specific uniques with twin implicit corruptions certainly puts a smile on my face. Next up we have Imperial Legacy, also announced today. This is a very big set, 22 cards, for a 6-link Imperial Bow with item level 100. Now, there's been a little bit of discussion on the Path of Exile subreddit about how rare that people think this card will be. I think that the difficulty of compiling a set will be reasonably in line with the difficulty of compiling other 6-link sets that exist in the game. So that'll be things like the Ethereal, which gives a 6-link Val Regalia, things like the Chains That Bind, which gives a 6-link armor piece. I'm expecting that because it's item level 100, it will drop from slightly higher slightly higher level zones. I mean, if I was in charge of deciding where this would go, I'd put it perhaps in the Chateau tile set, maybe, where it's sort of Azaro themed, but really that's not my decision to make. In any case, with 22 cards in the set, this is going to be one that you're going to definitely find this card from Diviner's Strongboxes, I think. I don't think it's going to be tremendously rare, and there's going to be a lot of broken up pieces of sets out there. There'll probably be some arbitrage opportunities there if you want to actually compile the sets, put them together, and so you're basically buying the Divination cards singly, compiling a set, then selling it off to someone that can't be bothered doing all of that and just wants the bow. However, I would keep in mind that a bow that is not a Shaper bow tends to be obsoleted by item level 80 plus Shaper bows. Shaper bows have access to some extraordinarily powerful mods, especially if they're item level 85 or higher. Some of the mods that they get access to are Socketed Skills Chain one more time, or sorry, no, Bow Attacks Chain one more time, and there's also your attacks have 20% chance to deal double damage. These mods are amazing, and I don't think that an item level 100 bow can compete with them, even though I believe it does pick up an extra tier of weapon elemental damage that you can't get on, say, an item level 84. In any case, this will be a set that I think people will be looking to get when they're sort of just starting to get rolling in maps. They're comfortably farming yellow maps, and they want to look for gear that's good enough to push seriously into red maps, but that isn't necessarily their forever gear. Not necessarily the thing that you're going to use when you try and bring down all at depth 750, but it will be something that you'll be quite happy to use for a long time until then. Ultimately, if you compile this set, turn it in, get yourself a nice bow, and then craft it up, you'll probably be looking to eventually upgrade from it, but that'll be some way down the track. Next up, we have the Archmage's Right Hand, Glyphic Prophecy Wand. Now, in case you're confused like I was at first, this does not refer to glyphic as in glyphic fossils. This refers to this mod. Let's just find it here. Tier 2 added spell damage. So it is increased spell damage, 70 to 74%. It is a very rare roll. Even though there is a higher tier, Runic, which is, I believe, 75 to 79. These two rolls are extraordinarily rare, and getting it on a Prophecy Wand is quite impressive. There's a lot of uses for that. It can either be used straight up as just adding spell damage to your Prophecy Wand for using it as a caster stick, or it can also be crafted further with the Crown of Eyes unique helmet, and then the Glyphic mod will actually give you attack damage instead. There's not really much space in the meta at the moment for Crown of Eyes wands, but who knows where things will change in the future. It's item level 100, so as a Prophecy Wand it can roll pretty much anything. Again, it's not Shaper or Elder, and that does put some limits on its usefulness. I'm not exactly sure where this will be used, but I'm sure that people will use it as even just as a start for further crafting. Compile a set of this, slap a Regal Orb on it, and then multi-mod something that is not absolutely amazingly outstanding, but that is a very good item that will be very hard to find an upgrade from. Next up, we have the Fool. Now, I'm not sure if the 420 thing here is deliberate. You got this guy that looks a bit like a stoner. You've got one of four cards in the set. You got 20 orbs a chance, but this guy really does look like a fool in this context. Sort of looks like someone from Earth that slipped into Rayclast and is very, very proud of whatever this helmet is that he's chanced himself. In any case, this is a pure currency card, and depending upon its rarity, depending upon the demand for Chance Orbs next league, it may end up being one of the more impactful divination cards, such as the Exalt card that drops in Precinct, that leads to a lot of players running Precinct, or alternately it may be one of the less exciting currency divination cards that, like for instance the card for for 40 Scrolls of Wisdom that drops in various library tile sets, so Archive and so on, Archive, Museum, and a couple others, where that card is there. You certainly notice it if you're running it, if you're running that map a lot, but you just don't, there's not enough demand for Scrolls of Wisdom for it to be all that worthwhile to pick up. So we don't know where it's going to drop. We'll find that out. But this will be something that I think everyone's going to turn a couple of sets in during the next league. Next up, we have a personal favourite, Vanity. Vanity is an obvious play on the Humility card. It's got the same two characters. It's got this woman and this rower. However, the interaction between them is completely different here. The artwork's absolutely stunning on this one, and it's very simple. Tabula Rasa, Corrupted. Can I just say, I absolutely love the name. You start with Humility, then you corrupt it, and you have Vanity. Exactly the opposite. Once more, this will be a Tabula Rasa with a single implicit corruption on it, and there's been a bit of speculation. I personally think the most likely spot for this to drop will be in channel maps and waterways maps that have been corrupted, and in addition in the various Vaal side areas in Blood Aqueduct and Channel. However, this is pure speculation. I have no information, no confirmation on that. That's just me recognizing the theme and making some speculation on it. In any case, I am really looking forward to this card. Tabula Rasa, let's say, I don't think it's the best target for corruption in general, because most of the biggest hits you can get with it still end up generally being inferior to a Skin of the Loyal. However, it's still pretty solid, and corrupted Tabula with +1 gems, or with a limited +2, like +2 projectile gems or something like that, is certainly strong. And I think many a person will be wearing a Vanity sourced set of Tabula early in the league, and then they'll be very happy when they can upgrade from it to something else. So that's the Divination cards that were released today. There have been some others that have been announced as well, so let's go through those. First up, there's the two that were announced with the initial league announcement. So there's Dark Dreams. I made an entire video on this. I'm quite interested in this card. I think this is the most interesting of the new cards on its own, but I made some extensive discussion of that in another video. I'm not going to rehash that all here. Just to say, this is capped at item level 80 for the same reasons that Xoph's Blood is capped at item level 80, and you should always turn it in on a level 80 or higher character. And I think a lot of people will have a bit of fun using this, but ultimately, the helmet that they get from it, they will eventually want to upgrade from, just like if you get an Imperial Legacy, if you source a bow from that, you will eventually want to upgrade from it. Alluring Bounty. Now this is a Divination card that, although it's just a straight up currency card, each individual card is worth so much that I think this card will be really exciting when it does drop. There's a bit of speculation as to where it might drop, and with a name like Alluring Bounty, there's two things that come to mind. First up, there's the Alluring Abyss, which is the Uber-Atzeri fight. So potentially the entire zone, potentially just Uber-Atzeri herself, potentially just the trio. Who knows? That's one of the zones that it sounds like it could fit with. The other one, and I think this would be quite a strange choice in some ways, but also quite interesting. There is a Sextant mod that exists only as a meme, and whereas the other Sextant mods that come up are much more common and clearly explain what they do. For instance, one Sextant mod is area contains additional monsters that deal physical damage. Players and monsters take 10% increased physical damage. You can read that, you immediately know what it does. Some of them are a little bit more mysterious, like area contains clusters of wealthy barrels. But even then, you can work out through trial and error what that does. There is one mod that is extraordinarily rare that says areas are alluring, and it doesn't say anything further than that. It's generally believed to be a bit of a phishing meme, and I just got muted for a couple of seconds. I disclosed phishing secrets. Sorry, I can't do that again. I'll get in trouble. So that's one possibility. It could actually be that the zone that zones that have that very rare sextant mod areas are alluring may end up being where this drops. Alternately, there's a couple other places that might make thematic sense. The Atziri's Vault's unique map is a possibility, or it might just be put alongside one of the really difficult encounters that GGG might feel doesn't have enough rewards at the moment. For instance, the Shaper. The Shaper doesn't have enough rewards to warrant the difficulty of getting to him. Likewise, Uber Atziri is probably a little bit under-rewarded as well at the moment. Not that the fight's overly difficult, but just that it's a huge effort to get there. Lastly, could conceivably be from Mastermind, Katarina. There's all sorts of spots like that. But in any case, every time that this card drops, it's going to be very impactful. It's going to be an amazing drop when you get it. And so for that reason, I think this is going to be a card that if I'm wrong with all my speculation about the Alluring Abyss, Katarina, various other boss fights, or other unfarmable areas, if it is put into a normal map as a rare drop, say for instance if it was given to Lava Lake, then in that case it would be a strong incentive for players to target that specific map. So yeah, I'm interested to see where this card drops. If it is a farmable spot, it is going to have a serious impact on our Atlas strategies. So that's 8 of the 9. Let's get on to the big one. This is the big one. Buried Treasure for a Sulphite Scarab. Now firstly, this doesn't specify whether you get a gilded Scarab, a rusted Scarab, or go somewhere in between and get a polished one. However, that doesn't really matter that much. The current state of Sulphite Scarabs, getting a rusted Sulphite Scarab gives you essentially 1.2 Nikos. A polished gives you 1.4, and a gilded gives you 1.6. If this isn't weighted in any way, so if there's an equal chance to get all 3 tiers of Scarabs, then this is basically 1.4 Nico spawns. People who've watched some of my other videos on Sulphite acquisition would know that GGG announced during the 3.6 patch notes, it may be in the patch notes, it may have been some other developer discussion that happened at that time, but they said that Nico has an 8% chance to spawn in maps when he is not currently, when no master is occupying that map on your Atlas. When a master is occupying a map on your Atlas and you run that map, then either Nico is on it, in which case 100% to have Nico, or someone else is on it, there is a 0 chance of getting Nico. So 8% if you run a map that doesn't have an Atlas, doesn't have a master mission on it. Additionally, when you kill a boss, there is a 4% chance for Nico to spawn on your Atlas somewhere. So with all of that in mind, on average you get 0.12 Nikos per map that you do. This Divination card, a Scarab, assuming that it's 1.4 average Nikos, so there's no bias between gilded, polished, and rusted. This is basically about as much Nico as you get from 12 maps when you get a complete set of this. So it's pretty meaningful. However, in addition to that, the Sulphite Scarab is tradable to other players and is the most convenient way to amass a lot of Sulphite quickly. So there will always be a significant power gamer demand from people who feel they have outgrown the Atlas content, want to run the more rewarding and more challenging and often, if you've outleveled the Atlas, just more engaging content that you find deep in the Delve Mines, then the Buried Treasure Divination card is going to be something they're going to have just an insatiable demand for. So if you're someone that is not really taking Delve seriously, you may still want to consider running the map that this drops in. I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to assume that it's going to drop in a normal map on the Atlas. I could very well be wrong, and there certainly is a potential for it to be thematically linked to Malkoon, which I really hope it isn't. But if it drops from a normal map on the Atlas and you're in a trade league, you may want to consider targeting that map. And that's, as I say, it's just because Sulphite Scarabs are worth so much, because the Delve rewards, once you get deep in the mines, the amount of maps that you get, the amount of raw currency orbs you get, the amount of fossils that you get, it is the most lucrative activity in the game that involves killing monsters. So we're not talking about trading, we're not talking about some of the unsavory things like scamming, just in terms of actually earning currency that from items that you cause to enter the game economy rather than just from transacting with other players. Delve is phenomenally lucrative once you get deep. So, if this is in a standard map on the Atlas, then there's going to be a lot of players that will be target farming that map. There will be a heavy trade in this card, and there will be a lot of them going around, even if it's quite rare. On the other hand, if it is in a unique map like Malkun, there, again, it looks like it could conceivably be, or there's also that eyeball map, Wakahakana. I can't pronounce it. I'm not even going to try. And there's those two maps that it could thematically fit into, and those are examples of maps that will become much more expensive if this Divination card is put into them. Anyways, that's the 9 Divination cards that we know about so far. As I say, I think that this will be the most impactful one, and others will be of lesser, but all of them will certainly have an audience. There's no Divination cards in this expansion so far that have been released that I think will get a universal I can't understand why that card was introduced reaction. Even if the interest in them is mostly from solo self-found players in some cases. So I think there's a lot to look forward to when the expansion comes out. If you've got any comments, do feel free to fire them away, and I'll make another video when the rest of them are released.